Hey, my name is Elise Butterfield. I'm presenting today on foster care families and the health concerns around them. A description of this population, these children are placed in a temporary living situation. Usually they are 18 years or younger or 20 years and younger um, because they're at immediate risk of harm. So they usually suffer some sort of trauma or abuse to initiate removal from the home. Last year, it was recorded that 52% of this population was male and 48% was female, with the average age at about 7.5 years old. Most of the kids in this population, however, are between 0 and 5 years old. So 44% white, 23% black, 21% Hispanic. I couldn't find any available information for Davis County as far as how many kids were in foster care, but statewide there was quite a bit of information, and last year there was almost 3,000 children in foster care at one point in time. In 2018, that meant that about 5,000 youth were assisted in the foster care program, whether they were coming in or out over the course of that year. And then nationally, there's about 443,000 children in foster care at any point in time. So internationally, there's not a lot of countries that do foster care, but there are 153 million orphans worldwide. So for Utah, that's 0.3% of the population, and the United States is 0.6% of the population. I think one of the main reasons that's lower in Utah is because of the religious and family focus that we have here. A lot of family members, relatives or grandparents, are able to step in before the child has to go to foster care. So some of the social determinants of health, obviously housing instability. They're moved out of their house into someone else's house, and a lot of times even previous to foster care, they have very unstable housing. Early childhood education and development is an issue, and access to healthcare services. So some of the specific concerns, chronic and untreated health problems, including mental health issues. Um, these children often are not reaching their developmental milestones and have educational delays. 30 to 80% of children that come into foster care have at least one physical health problem, and 1/3 of those are chronic health conditions. So also they're at higher risk for sexually transmitted diseases because of abuse, and dental problems. They're not receiving their health care, dental care that they need, and birth defects because of drug abuse from the parents, and also children with birth defects who have parents with mental health issues are just at a higher risk for being placed in foster care. So looking at the root cause of this, so children in foster care, why are they there? Why are they suffering from this mental health problems and things? Well, their parents are obviously neglecting or abusing these children, probably because they have mental health issues of their own. Maybe they've never received proper treatment for those health issues due to a lack of resources and education. It has been found that early childhood trauma and adversity actually do affect the neurobiology of the developing brain. So, parents who have experienced this kind of trauma in their past will often pass that to their children. And it creates this vicious cycle for children to try and get out of because they're never presented with other options. They don't see beyond what is happening to them. They only know what's going on in their home and in their life. So these behaviors perpetuate on generation to generation. So as far as Maslow's, pyramid of needs, he or these children have obviously meet their physiological and safety needs. Um, Most of the time, just the physiological, but once they get into the foster care system, um, those levels are met more so. One woman from the foster care system was quoted as saying, "The work of the American foster care system stops once the basic needs are satisfied, according to Maslow's first two levels of the pyramid." So little thought is given to the emotional and developmental needs of these foster children. So you can bet that they are functioning at a very basic level, and not at those higher levels of development. They suffer from cognitive delays, depression, and poor mental health. They don't reach that sense of autonomy and self-worth that comes when these needs are met, their emotional needs and meaningful bonds with adults. They're just not able to form those things because they don't have those resources. Come on. Sorry. So some of the communicable diseases that these children are at risk for are, even vaccine preventable diseases. They're not taken to the doctor and received those timely vaccines. Some of those are missed. They're at risk for bloodborne diseases and sexually transmitted diseases, including pregnancy, because of the abuse and things that they've gone through. So by 18 years old, 93% of foster kids report being sexually active, which is crazy. And then almost half of the girls that transition out of foster care have been pregnant before they turn 20. So, what can be done about these things? Education goes a long way. These social workers that work in placing these children in foster care homes really need to figure out the vaccine schedule of these kids and get them on track. And I know that they do have systems in place to try and do that, and it can be incredibly difficult. But maybe it comes down to the government trying to really initiate these things and provide the resources that these children need in order to be taken care of from these diseases. And education on sexually transmitted diseases. These teenagers have a warped sense of what is real and what is healthy and what is not. So some of the other diseases here, mental illness, like we touched on, they're more susceptible to drug and alcohol abuse. Again, poor dental hygiene and malnutrition. They're just, those basic needs are not always met prior to going into foster care. So these kids are really at risk for poor self-care, self-harm, and to others. They have these negative behaviors, depression, violence, neglect, and they have high-risk behaviors because that's what they've seen, in their home before or their neighborhood. I think it's worth taking a look at the parents. These children are often released back to the parents once they get out of foster care. And, in order to change these behaviors, we really need to look at what are these kids still being exposed to? Have they been given the tools they need to overcome these behaviors? Do they know that there's better for them out there? So same risk for harm by and to others. Are they still in an environment where they're going to be abused further? Or, is this something that we can help them get past, especially those children that phase out of the system, after their 18 years? They're not able to cope, they act out violently, they're angry, and again, they have that risk for drug abuse. So, education and resources, really, I think it comes down to our government and providing the funds for these children and parents to receive the education they need to break this cycle and to help them understand that their behaviors need to change if they ever expect to get out of it. So here's my references for my PowerPoint here, and I really enjoyed looking up all this information. It was actually pretty fun, and I read a lot of very interesting stories, so I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks.